maybe we'll start with some basic things. Maybe tell us your name and a little bit about what you want to say.
Okay, well, my name is Jen Pillis. I'm a freelance illustrator. I've been renting a studio here pretty much in this space at Akin Lansdowne since 2012. When I joined, I had a tour, and then that day wrote back and I was like, I absolutely have to have this space. Like, I fell in love with the space as soon as I saw it. I've been here ever since. This fall it would have been, I think, 5 years since I joined. 4 years? 5 years? Like a long time since I've been here. And a couple of years in, I quit my retail job, my day job, and started working as a full-time artist, and told Oliver and Michael at Akin what I was doing, and I was like, I'd love to work for you, and they hired me as a studio manager. So I've been working for Akin since 2015 as a studio manager, helping with programming, helping with social media and coordination and all kinds of things, and my role with the organization keeps evolving and changing, as does my art practice, as does my experience here at the studio with my studio mates. But when we got the eviction notice, I decided to, even though this particular space wasn't actually evicted, I decided to move with everybody to King and Spadina for those of the people that are moving, because I wanted to stay with the core group. But it also was an interesting opportunity to kind of change my studio practice a bit, since I have been here for so long, and I've been kind of like nesting and hoarding and really just wiggling my way into the dirt. So this seemed like a really interesting opportunity for me to relocate with my friends and my studio mates and be there for them as a part of that transition, but also I'm looking at it as a way to kind of liven up my own art practice and kind of give it new life within a new space. So,
Right.
you know, I'm feeling really sad about moving because it's been such a big part of my life, and I really do love it here so much. But, you know, there's a lot of excitement there too. That just kind of getting ready for. So I've actually packed all my stuff into storage, and it's all gone, and my space is empty now. And I'll just be a nomad for the rest of the month until we move in May to the new space at King and Spadina. So that'll be interesting too, to not have a studio for the month of April and see what that's like.
Right.
Everything's in boxes and storage. I have like one box of art supplies ready to go for like when I need to make something. But other than that, I'm kind of in a resting point and waiting for the transition to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of make things clear, there's 2 spaces in this building at Akin, and so the first level studio is being vacated right now, and we are now in the second level where your space was, which is not an immediate moving situation, but it still affects you, right?
Well, like a lot of the members on the second floor here have been like, oh, are we going to get an eviction notice too? And I really don't know. I really can't say for sure. We've asked the building owners and they haven't told us yes or no. What's been happening in the building that I've observed for the last couple of years is on the 3rd floor, on the 2nd floor, on the 1st floor, they do these little rounds of evictions. They're vacating these spaces, they renovate them, and then they move people in. But they've already done that on the 2nd floor in this building. They've already evicted some people, groups of wonderful artists who were my neighbors and friends who had to leave. They gutted the space and renovated it, and now it's other businesses have moved in. So I've been telling the artists here that hopefully we don't have to leave this space anytime soon, and for a lot of people, you know, their homes are near here or other places that are important to them are near here. They really do not want to leave this neighborhood. So because I'm leaving, someone from the 1st floor is able to move upstairs, and it just so happened that a few other people were leaving too. So there's actually 4 artists who were evicted from the main floor out of Akin Lansdowne who get to move up here to the 2nd floor for May. Yeah. So that's kind of really nice for those people. And hopefully we don't get an eviction notice anytime soon for this space, and Akin Lansdowne can still exist in a tiny version. Right. Because we're going from, I think, like over 60 artists in this space to about 15 here on the 2nd floor.
That's a pretty major change. Right?
Yeah, and we have a private office in the basement and one on the main level too that we're not evicted. Again, we're just hoping nothing happens to them anytime soon.
And can you talk about the structure of Akin? Like you mentioned that you're a manager, you're also a member. So what kind of, like how does that kind of work, and how is sort of the organization organized?
So Akin was formed by two artists, Oliver and Michael, who, Michael Delios, not Michael Vickers, who's now an employee of Akin. So Oliver Pauk and Michael Delios formed Akin with a group of friends in a loft 10 years ago, and I think maybe there were like 6 or 7 of them, and then they got a location at Queen and Spadina and moved more artists in. Then they got this location here at Lansdowne and Bloor and moved more artists in, and it was kind of, that was it for many, many years. And so they Akin provides month-to-month rent at affordable rates for artists that includes 24-hour access to the space, access to storage, access to a shared workspace, also like all kinds of community enrichment that we're doing through our not-for-profit Akin projects, which I also work for. And then after a few years of the 2 locations, Akin Dufferin and Akin Lansdowne, which are the 2 that happened to be evicted most recently, we went through a growth spurt. So we opened Akin DuPont, and then a couple years later we opened Akin Sunrise, Ossington, River, and St. Clair all in 1 year, which was last year, which was our big growth spurt, and we're kind of halting at this point. And then when Akin Dufferin at Queen and Dufferin was evicted, we got the new space at King and Spadina. And at that point, we were planning to relocate them. When we got our eviction notice here at Akin Lansdowne, we decided to relocate everybody. So we've got close to 85 artists, I think, moving into King and Spadina, evicted from 2 separate Akin locations, moving in together into this new, also temporary community, because the lease we got in the new space is, again, that building's scheduled for demolition, and it's going to become this crazy other project. And so we're looking at adopting a more nomadic approach to studio spaces, because artists really want to be near the museums and the galleries and the supply shops and the artist communities. They want to stay in the core of the city, but rent has become absolutely unaffordable for anybody to do that. Yeah. But when we work with these property developers in this way, we can get these temporary spaces for 1, 2, 3 years while they're working on getting all their ducks in a row for their other projects. Mm-hmm. So we can stay in interesting locations, and we can keep giving artists affordable studio rates and keep providing all of the other things that help with the artists' community. So, I mean, the way that works is every studio location at Akin has a studio manager. So I'm the studio manager here at Akin Lansdowne. I make sure the spaces are filled. I make sure the members are happy. I make sure that the internet works and the light bulbs are working and all those kinds of things. You're the go-to for everything. I'm everybody's go-to girl for their studio needs, so that they have space to work in that works for them. Mm-hmm. You know, because it's a month-to-month model, we have artists moving in and out all the time, or going from one location to another, from a small studio to a big one, from a big one to a small one. It's a lot of shuffling around. I like that kind of work. And I work with the other studio managers at all the other locations, and we coordinate together. So Akin has 7 staff now, as well as Oliver Pauk, who is the founder and director of Akin, who's not technically staff because he's not technically paid by Akin. Right. He's like, this is his baby, you know? He's just nurturing us, and soon he's going to have his own baby, and he's going to release us into the world while he takes care of his family at home. So I will be taking over for some of Oliver's things that he does, and so will some of the other staff members, and we have a real fluid way of working, so Akin is constantly evolving and changing according to member feedback, according to member needs, according to changes in the city. So as we get eviction notices or as we find new spaces, you know, there's other studios this is happening to, not just Akin Collective. There's all kinds of other spaces that are at risk or have been evicted.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend.
It's a trend. Toronto, isn't it? There's there was the Coffin Factory, there was...
I was in that one.
Oh, were you?
I was, yeah.
I mean, I'm blanking, but 401 Richmond was at risk for a while there too. There was all the Mervish studios. Everyone had to leave those neighborhoods. Like Inspiration Studios, which is a really amazing pottery space, is at risk. You know, many people are facing the bleak future of where am I going to create my work. Mm-hmm. So Akin works to try and have a solution to that in the best way that we can figure out. Yeah. And it's been a really interesting time, because when I started working for Akin, we had 3 locations, and now we have 7 or 8, or it's hard to keep track now that we opened the
has not diminished, right?
And the problems have only gotten worse. Like,
right.
We got the eviction for Queen and Dufferin to be out by March 1st. Now we have to be out of here by May 1st. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? So we always got our eyes peeled for new spaces, for new partners to collaborate, and all of that.
Do you think that there is some way that Toronto is going to be able to embrace a bit more of a permanent situation for their creative community? Like, as somebody who's really involved, like, do you think that there's any way that might become an option?
I think there is. There's a lot of people looking at policies regarding, especially property taxes and those kinds of things, giving property owners tax breaks for renting to co-working spaces or for renting spaces to not-for-profit organizations. If that kind of conversation and that kind of momentum continues, there's a good chance that we will be able to keep accessing affordable spaces in the city, and that people will become sympathetic to the cause and realize there is a need to have spaces and keep spaces. You know, we don't want to have to keep moving all the time.
And that there's a value to having this community be a stable and supported one.
Because otherwise all the artists will have to leave the city, you know, and it'll be a city without art.
Yeah.
And who wants to live there?
Not me.
Not me. So I might move.
So maybe speaking of art, can you talk a little bit about what your personal art practice involves? You're an illustrator, but I know that you do a lot of other things as well.
I sure do, yeah. I went to Sheridan College in Oakville for illustration. I've known ever since I was very young that I wanted to make art and be a storyteller. For a while I thought I might want to be a writer or a filmmaker, but my real expertise and my real passion is in drawing and painting. And so what I do is I use both methods of drawing and painting to make multimedia illustrations. For a while I was trying to promote myself as an editorial illustrator in this commercial market, but as I've worked for Akin and been exposed to all kinds of different artists and art practices, I've been creating and selling merchandise. I self-publish books and zines. I've self-published a children's book, and I have a comic book project that I'm working on self-publishing right now. It's been delayed because of this move, but thank you. Yeah, so you know, I had this great, exciting comic I was working on, and I had a lot of momentum going for that. And when we got the eviction notice, it pretty much just stopped. I had like a artist block for a little while where I just couldn't really do anything until we had sorted this problem out. Yeah. And now that we know where we're moving, and now that I know that my studio's packed up and I know where I'm going and I know what the future is kind of going to look like, that's starting to come back, and I'm finally able to actually start working on my own art again.
So as a result of feeling a little bit, like just a little bit of stability, it just kind of makes things that much more open, even just your own personal work. Right?
Yeah, it's really amazing. And it was amazing for me how hard it was to work for a while there, because I was stressed and I was anxious. I was worried about everyone, including myself. And so, yeah, it feels good to be able to work again. Mm-hmm. So I'm working on the comic, but I also am interested in working on more things in my community. So like live drawing at events, or drawing large-scale drawings for public work or temporary public works. Like I've really enjoyed drawing with the chalk markers on glass for window displays and that kind of thing. I'm hoping to do more work in the community that way, with local business owners, with other local groups. And then I also, largely in part thanks to Akin, but also it's something I've always done my whole life, is be involved with arts programming. So putting on workshops, networking, Skillshare events, just finding ways to meet other artists, to connect with other artists, to share skills and build skills with other artists. But my expertise is in zines. So zine is a self-published magazine or booklet or pamphlet, or like zines have really evolved now. But I've been teaching zine workshops and publishing my own zines for 15 years or more, and it's a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
So that's also something I'm hoping to revive a bit more when I move to my new studio at King and Spadina, because I haven't actually produced a zine since 2016. Which doesn't seem like a long way away, but when you think about it, it's like, oh, that's 2 years now that I haven't actually self-published anything. So I'm excited for my new comic and for my future zines projects that I'm going to make. But I am still a commercial illustrator and a live drawer and all those other things.
These are pretty major themes in artists' lives, right? Like that everybody has to kind of be a master of so many things.
It is an interesting thing.
It's a juggling kind of act.
Yeah, and that's something I enjoy too, is being a part of a kin, because getting to know the other artists and getting involved with other arts organizations provides a lot of opportunity and makes me aware of all of the things that I might not have thought about, because I was trained in a very specific way in school to be a very certain type of illustration professional, and I'm finding other ways to use my business skills and my drawing and painting skills, my digital skills, to connect in all kinds of other ways through art, and that's a really nice thing for me.
Yeah, and that's a huge benefit of kin as well, having that kind of built-in community where you are exposed to other people and ideas, and
it's the best.
and you have people who want to get involved and do things,
and
right?
who get excited. Like
exactly.
Like even today, I was having conversations with people about plans for future gatherings and workshops and networking events, and anytime you're in the studio and you get together with 1 or 2 or 3 people, and other people walk by and join you, and we have these incredible conversations, and we're learning about each other as people, but also as artists, and we're, now if I need printing or need a photographer or need someone to document my artwork, I know who to go to. Like, I'm going to go to my studio mates. If I want to buy jewelry or ceramics, I know where to go. I'm going to my studio mates. Like, we have so many people. There's like almost 300 members in a kin now across all the buildings. There's something for everyone there, and everyone's really willing and excited to be a part of each other's lives and our practices that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about some of the themes or aesthetic in your actual work? Sure,
yeah. I work with a lot of nature imagery and natural world. Like, I'm an avid gardener, and I'm a plein air painter as well as one of my hobbies, but it's also something that I use to develop my illustration practice and keep my drawing and painting skills honed. So there's lots of nature allegory, and there's lots of love and joy for the natural world expressed in my illustration. I'm also a huge fan of science fiction and science in general, so there's lots of that coming across in my artwork, science and the love of exploration and of learning, and how that relates to our natural world, and also storytelling. Like, I tried with every image I create that there's a story there, even if it's just a single image or if it's a series of sequential narrative, it's more than just what you're seeing. There's a tale to tell,
Right. That's the depth, right?
Yeah.
And the comic book that you're working on.
It's a secret.
It's a secret.
Well,
we can't know anything about it. Give us a teaser.
Sure. It's a science fiction short story.
Amazing.
I'm self-publishing it entirely, and I've never really made a comic project that wasn't for school. So it's my first time exploring comics in the way I've always wanted to. It's a mostly silent narrative, so there's not a lot of dialogue, and it's the same thing. There's a surface level story, and there's a story underneath the story that is told by the images.
Yeah, which is a pretty incredible way of telling stories, right?
Yeah.
Without actual words.
Yeah, just with the pictures.
Yeah, which is really impressive. And you're working on that one entirely by yourself. You don't. That's it's a self project.
Every little piece of the way, and I'm still not sure exactly what I'll do with it. Like, I don't plan to sell it in stores or go and do vendor markets this year. I've done a lot of craft and zine and book fairs, and it's just not for me. So I'm going to have a book. I'm going to have multiple copies of the book. I don't know. Maybe I'll have online on my store, but maybe I'll just have them ready for whenever I need them.
Yeah.
Like,
and sometimes these kind of projects, like, once they're done, they tell you where they need to go next, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think it's fair enough to work it out and then go from there.
It's, like, comic books is something I always thought I'd get to eventually, because I'll be a professional illustrator, and then maybe I'll get these big jobs, and then maybe finally I'll get to do a comic book, because that was the dream. And I got to a certain point where I was like, why don't I just do the dream? So I'm just doing it. I'm just making the type of story I want to make.
Yeah.
I'm taking it slow so that I can do it well. So I'm not rushing myself. I did have a deadline in mind, but then with everything that's been going on and all the changes, I'm not putting that pressure on myself. So I'm just going to work on it until it's done.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Thanks.
You were talking about doing a lot of craft fairs and publishing.
Yeah.
Or-
Like
they're not
zine
called-
fairs and book fairs and art markets and stuff.
You're wearing a piece of a project that I know that you are responsible for.
Yes,
Yeah.
This is my Talisman Mandala enamel lapel pin. There's 4 of them in this series. They're limited edition. I made 100 of each. They're based on my mandala paintings. I gave it a whirl. It's a fun thing to do, to create artist merchandise, to create collectible limited edition artist merchandise.
Yeah.
It's definitely not something I want to focus on career-wise, but I'm glad I did it. I might still do a couple of more designs. I mostly did it so I can trade with other artists, because I like that. I like, being like, hey, I'll give you 4 pins for that ceramic mug or whatever, a nice way to kind of share what we make with each other, because I do just produce images that usually I don't even sell my originals, I license the right to use my originals, so I don't have much to give. So to have these little things, these shiny little tokens, I consider them talismans and mandalas. They're talisman mandalas. They're supposed to be little magical treasures for you. So I like having something like that I can gift or trade or sell if need be to other artists and makers.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of an amazing example of using your skills to be able to produce, and it's still kind of within the realm of editions and and all of that kind of stuff, and it's available to people in a different way that that illustration may not be, as you're saying,
True.
like the licensing and all of.
Yeah, same with self-publishing, digital printing and all print technology is becoming more accessible, more affordable. The software, same thing. It's faster, it's smarter, it's easier to use, and so creating your own things is becoming easier for all artists, and I like having that creative control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I still do want those big clients, right, who want to
publish
my work in their big publications, but it's not something I'm striving for as much as I was when I first got out of college.
Right. So what does your kind of day-to-day life look like as someone who works in this way? I know you've mentioned kind of your role at Akin and your personal practice, but sort of on a practical level,
every single day of my life is completely different. I try to give myself daytime hours and have weekends and evenings off to spend with my family, but that's not always possible. Literally, I don't have a routine. Every morning, afternoon, and evening is different with different appointments. Some are for Akin Collective for the studios, some are for Akin projects, some are for my own artwork, some are for other projects I'm involved in that aren't art related. Sometimes, because I am so lucky to have the kind of lifestyle and the kind of career where I can plan my own schedule and have control of my own schedule, sometimes I just take a day off and go to the park. So, today I had 2 programming meetings for Akin projects, and now we're having an interview, and this afternoon I have 2 tours to show people studio spaces that are available to them to rent. And then I was going to go for a walk along the West Toronto Rail Path and look for poison ivy, because we're having an event there and someone told me there's poison ivy, but it's supposed to rain, so I might just go get a drink somewhere.
Yeah, it's amazing the responsibilities, eh? Today I'm going to look for poison ivy along the rail path.
So
that's part of my job.
I really love doing different things, and I really love having a flexible schedule, so I'm quite organized, and I'm quite efficient, and I'm quite innovative, so all of these things allow me to kind of work on the fly and manage multiple appointments, multiple tasks, multiple to-do lists, a creative side project or 2 or 3. I've started sewing recently for all the babies in my life. I make baby clothes now. And I'm going to start my garden soon, so balancing all of those things. And I got a gym membership, so now I'm trying to work for 2 companies. Also, I'm technically a business, I'm a registered business, so keeping up my illustration practice, sewing, reading, gardening, snuggling my cats, trying to have a social life, visiting my family, trying not to go crazy, keeping fit. It's work. What I do is keeping those evenings and weekends free is really important for me. So making sure I know I have downtime and making sure I know I have days off where I can actually just do nothing. I literally have to schedule nothing into my schedule. But I'm usually pretty much planned out 2 weeks in advance at any given time.
Right.
And I've gotten used to it, and it's how I've lived my life since I was a teenager. So I think it's just going to be how it keeps going for the rest of my life.
Do you think that there's like a specific trait that makes people interested in, I don't know, maybe doing, because there's a lot of people talk about kind of the same things, you know, this kind of innovation and time management and kind of like a self-starter kind of thing. Like, is there something that connects a lot of artists in their
people who live in these lifestyles? Yeah. I think lots of people can't make it work because lots of people aren't organized and can't be reasonable with themselves. So lots of people either overschedule themselves and can't actually achieve all the things they set out, or they schedule things but don't actually enact them and follow through. I have a really good follow through and I have a real good bounce back. So when things go wrong, I bounce back quick and I adapt and change. And when I set out to do something, I follow through. I do it to completion. I think those are just parts of my personality, and it just so happens that I'm also a creative artist type, so it just works out for me career-wise. But if I had gotten into the sciences or something else, I'd probably still be living a similar lifestyle in a different career path.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, or how do you feel about being an artist in Toronto? Like, do you feel like are you supported here? Or are there things in place that...
It's really expensive to live here in general, and to make money as an artist, you have to be really, really good. I never have savings. I don't either. I don't have the kind of thing where I feel like I could ever own property or own a vacation home or even go on vacation and those kinds of things. So I do want to start a family one day, and I do want to be able to drive my family around in a vehicle and maybe take them on a holiday, and those kinds of little things that I think mean I have to leave the city one day in order to have maintain the lifestyle I like, but also have savings in the bank to provide for these other things. I don't feel like I have a future in Toronto, even though I feel like it was the best place for me to be for the last 10 years since I've graduated at college, and it's definitely setting me on the right path and helping me become the artist and career woman I want to be. It's not where I'm going to end up.
Is that, so are you saying that is a choice, or is that just something that is not going to be possible? Would you like to leave the city, or are you just considering it?
I think I would like to leave the city, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I think I still need to be here now, and at least for a few more years to keep going in the direction I'm going. But I'm really hoping it gets to the point one day where I can move somewhere that's a little more countryside with a little more breathing room and a little more peace and quiet. A little less hustle and bustle, you know? I get a lot of anxiety in these big crowds. I get a little depressed when I see all this cement and all these buildings all the time. But I still like to be able to come to Toronto when I can, because this is where the events are and the people and the cultural institutions. So, I mean, we're talking about maybe moving to Whitby or Oshawa or something like that. Somewhere on the go line where I can still get here, but also where I can easily get into nature and have a bit more affordability, so when I have children, I can have a house instead of putting them in a basement apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And, so maybe we'll talk about Akin a little bit more. If you had to say there's one benefit that you think is really significant in being part of Akin, what would it be?
It's the people. It's the artists I've met, my studio mates. They've become my friends. They've taught me things, I've taught them things, and we've given each other opportunities, and we were forming lifelong connections. So it was, yes, it's nice to be able to have a workspace away from home, because I definitely work better when I leave my home and go somewhere else. So to have something separated from my laundry and my cats and my chores and the television definitely made me work, produce more work and produce better work. But that's not what was most important to me. What was most important to me in these last few years has been the relationships I've formed with the people I met, who I never would have met, because they're not illustrators, they're not comic artists, they're not.
That's the thing.
They're not into the same things I'm into. We don't go to the same places. We don't live in the same neighborhoods. We never would have met if we weren't a part of a kin. And there are dozens of them, maybe hundreds of these people who are really significant to me now.
Yeah,
including you.
I know, I feel the same way. Oh God, I forgot what I was going to talk about.
Not just people, babies, dogs, all these things, I've met
their lives, right?
Children, I've met animals, I've been to other people's spaces that I never would have known about, their homes, other workspaces. Some of the organizations we've partnered with a kin I never would have known about or been involved with if it wasn't for a kin. So all of that is so invaluable.
Yeah. And it's this kind of amazing, like, roll up your sleeves attitude, where if you want to make something happen, you get some people together and you make it happen. And it makes that possible.
A kin is amazing for momentum.
Yes.
For doing that, for being like, we have this little spark and now we have the people, we have the manpower and the skills, and then it just kind of goes. And I see that happen all the time with a kin, and I get to be involved in it in a really integral way. Like, when we have an event, I'm making the image for the event, I'm posting it online so you know about it, I'm coordinating with the instructor so they know what they're doing, and all of that. So it's really special for me to be able to affect communities and affect people in that way, which is something that I probably would not have such an impact on if I was just a commercial illustrator who worked all day on that. Maybe the people who saw my illustrations would feel something or learn something, but it would not have the same kind of impact on people's lives.
Yeah, I know. Working in isolation is a very, very different experience, right?
Yeah.
You need that. So what's next for you? After the move, after zine.
The comic project is important to me, so I will keep working on that. What's next is I really do want to get involved in event drawing. So I want to start practicing event drawing, going to events and drawing people and drawing what's happening at the events in a live, like on the fly kind of way.
That's amazing. I didn't know that people did that.
Yeah, I mean, I love
cool.
to draw. Like when I'm on the subway, I'm drawing the people while they're reading their books, and when my boyfriend's asleep on the couch, I'm drawing him with the cats, and when I'm out in nature, I'm drawing and painting what I see. I love to draw in the moment, and I like the way that shape and line and color can affect mood and energy. And again, those stories underneath what you're actually seeing. You see people at a party, but maybe the way I draw it, you can actually feel what it felt like to be at that party.
Yeah.
So once the comic project has got its momentum going, I'm going to start going to parties and events and build up kind of a bit of a portfolio for that and start trying to connect with event promoters.
That's incredible.
And that might not work out, and I might change my mind, and other things might shift and change. I do have a big plein air painting trip planned for myself in the summer, so I'm going to be going to Dwight, Huntsville, Bracebridge, Halliburton, and Bob Cajun to do...
It's a tour.
Yeah, it's over 3 weeks, and I'm really excited about it. And so what I do then is I bring my paper, my pens, my paints. I paint with gouache and watercolor, and I draw over it with ink and with pencil. And I will create a new body of work of these locations and draw and paint all day, which is, it's kind of like work, but it's definitely how I think of a holiday.
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm really excited for that. And again, that's just something that informs my practice, but who knows what will come of that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Is that this trip, is that something that you organized, or is it amazing?
I did something similar last year. I did a plein air painting residency in Tamworth, Ontario at Salmon River Studios, which is like a barnyard artist studio on beautiful farmland surrounded by a river and a forest. It's a gorgeous place. So I was camping, I had access to the barn, and I was painting all day every day, and I realized, wow, this is filling me with joy. Mm-hmm. And it's giving me creative momentum that lasted the whole year. One trip lasted this whole time and gave me energy to keep making other things. And so I planned a trip for myself last year, and now I'm just going to do it again. And I'm going to do that as often as I can for my whole life.
That sounds wonderful.
Thanks. But things with Akin will be busy too, because we have artists moving into the Akin studio program at MoCA. We have artists moving from Akin Lansdowne to Akin King. We have a big event coming up, Akin Comic Book Day on May 5th. And who knows what other events and programming we'll have ready and lined up for the summer. So all of that will be keeping me busy too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, how far in advance do you kind of plan a lot of these things? Is it just kind of like as ideas come about?
Yeah, the programming I work on with Michael Vickers, who's the director of the not-for-profit Akin Projects. We work together to make sure we have kind of what's reasonable for us, like to make sure we can afford it, to make sure we have the manpower, to make sure we're not overwhelming people or oversaturating anyone, and get a good balance of professional development, creative development, community involvement. We usually have things planned about 4 months in advance, and then we usually start promoting them about 1 month in advance. So I'm going to draft an email to all the studio members today about April events coming up, but there's lots of exciting stuff we've been working on for April, and it's all out there now, so you'll get an email later today.
Awesome.
Telling you all the events you should come to in April, including Comic Book Day, which is May 5th.
I'll be there.
And the way the programming comes about, you know, some of it is stuff that we've been doing every year that people love.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is because we've met someone who has a great idea. And some of it we're just like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to go to Allen Gardens and draw together? So then we make an event out of it. Like we're doing Akin Community Cleanup on Earth Day this year. That just came about kind of like, oh, you know, wouldn't it be nice if everyone cleaned up the neighborhood? Oh, let's do it on Earth Day. Oh, Henderson Brewery's they're doing like a free beer for trash giveaway. So why don't we do it there?
It's a good deal, isn't it?
We're gonna meet here at the studio. We're gonna have our coffees and our garbage bags and our rubber gloves, and we're gonna clean up the crap all over our neighborhood, walk along the rail path and clean up garbage, and then trade our garbage for free beer. So like we're opportunists. We do things when we can as they come up, and we're always open to and excited for new opportunities and new partners and new host locations and everything.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's the best.